Hey guys, today we're going to start talking about the judicial branch of the government. So we know there's three branches of the government. There's the judicial, legislative, and executive. And so let's talk a little bit about what this thing is, what it looks like, what it's for, how it's broken up, all that sort of good stuff. And so as we go through this, make sure you're taking some really good notes on this. Try to get important themes, try to get down important content as well, vocab words maybe if we need them. But what I will say is do not write everything that is on the screen, okay? Do not write every single word that you see. Again, get those content pieces down, get those really important themes, what have you. All right, so judicial branch, here we go. All right, what is the role of the judicial branch? That is the very first question. And really, what the judicial branch is for, it's equal justice for all. And its courts are set up to settle disputes. And so when there's an argument, when there's an issue, when there's something that we don't know the answer for, that's what they're there for. And it could be between different types of peoples or entities. For instance, it's between private parties, so me versus you, or Target versus Walmart, or me versus Costco or something. Okay, between private parties, it could be between a private party and the government. And so, you can sue the government, oddly enough, right? Now, you're not going to sue them necessarily for money, but maybe because you feel like you've been wronged, like your rights have been taken away, or you've been treated unfairly for some way, shape, or form for some reason. And thirdly, it can be between a state or local government and the U.S. government, or even between states themselves. And so, you will see where potentially a state could sue another state, or a state could sue the U.S. government, or vice versa. And we do see this happen because the states have separate rights than the U.S. government itself. And so, any of these reasons are why we have courts and what kind of disputes they will settle. All right. And so then how does this actually play out? What is the process? And what it looks like is we see courts applying the law and deciding in favor of one side or another. So they take a look at the issue, they see what happened, and they say, okay, what does the law say about this? What is it actually written down about this? What is the actual rules? And then they decide, was it broken or was it not broken? And so we find that there are two types of trials that courts will hold, and that is criminal trials. And of course, criminal trials, as you see, are people accused of crimes. That one's pretty straightforward. So you go and you rob Merchant's Bank today. Okay, don't do that. I have friends that work there. Okay, but if you go rob Merchant's Bank, you broke the law. If you go out and you go out there and you start beating somebody up in the middle of the street, and you leave them bloody on the ground there, that is breaking the law. Okay, so then we could have a trial for you because you broke the law, or at least allegedly broke the law. The other type of trial that we have is what's called a civil trial. And a civil trial is where we have disputes that happen between two or more private parties. Again, that's where maybe you go to Walmart and you're walking outside of Walmart and you slip and fall on some ice. And what ends up happening is you end up breaking your tailbone. You have to go to the hospital. There's huge medical fees, and you're out of work for the next 2 months. Okay. Now, did Walmart break a law by having slippery sidewalks? No, but they had negligence. They didn't salt like they should have. They put you in harm's way. It wasn't a crime that they did, but there was an issue that happened that caused you to accrue expenses that you wouldn't have otherwise. All right, and so really, what's the biggest underlying philosophy? How does this work, or what's the purpose of this, and how do these court systems play out? Well, what we end up seeing is, you might have heard this before, accused people are innocent until proven guilty. And so when you walk in that courtroom, when you take a step into that defense bench there, you are not guilty. And they have to prove that you are guilty. Benjamin Franklin once said, "It is better for 100 guilty men to go free than one innocent man to go to jail." And again, the big thing is here that we all have rights. Remember, just when they were crafting the Constitution, they were just coming out of this time of tyranny. And that's what we're talking about in this unit is how do we guard against tyranny, right? How do we guard against the government just taking control and oppressing us and doing whatever they want? And the way that we protect against that is to make sure that we all have rights. Okay. And so one of our rights is that we have the right to be seen as innocent. There's not this underlying principle that you are guilty when you walk in that courtroom. The prosecution has to prove that you have done something beyond a reasonable doubt. And so all accused people have a right to a public trial and an attorney. This is another thing for protection of those who have been accused of a crime, because not everybody who goes to court is guilty. There's period. And so if we have a public trial, that means that people can come and witness what is happening. So the things that take place are not behind closed doors, that they are out in the open for everyone to see. That keeps the government accountable. And an attorney, right? The court will appoint and pay for an attorney, a lawyer, if you cannot afford one. Because as we find out, if the prosecution, which is the government in, say, a criminal case, if they have really fancy lawyers that they're hiring and you have just yourself, that's not a fair trial. And so the goal of the justice system, the judicial branch, is to make sure that everybody has a fair trial. A fair trial. Okay, and so how does this all things get set up? Where does it come from? Well, it comes from Article 3 of the Constitution. We just break the Constitution up into different what we call articles. That's just little segments, really. Think of them like almost as chapters of a book. All right, and so in the Constitution, Article 3, it establishes a national Supreme Court. And I'm sure you guys have heard of the Supreme Court, right? That's the top dog. That's the big poppy. That's the top court in our nation. Okay. But here's the deal. If we just had the Supreme Court, just that one, things would not work out well. We wouldn't have time to hear all the cases. And we're going to talk later about really what the role of the Supreme Court is. And you're going to find out it's not to hear all the cases. And so what it also did in the Constitution was it allowed Congress to establish or create lower federal courts. And so we have other courts that can take care of federal business. So that means national things. That means U.S. issues. If there's U.S. laws, things like that, they're going to take care of them. And lastly, what we end up seeing is each state has its own laws. If you didn't know that, there's more than just U.S. laws, but each state has its own laws and court systems as well, where it takes care of its own state level stuff. Okay, here's a quick couple of vocab words that we need to make sure that we talk on, okay? And that's jurisdiction, okay? And really what jurisdiction is, it's a court's authority to hear and decide on a case. So if I have, we'll just say, for instance, a state court cannot hear federal court issues. So someone broke a federal law, it doesn't go to state court, it goes to federal court. Just as if a state law is broken, it's not going to go to federal court, it's going to go to state court. And so it's the authority to hear and decide on a case. All right. And there's two different types of jurisdiction. One of them is exclusive. Just think of things that are exclusive. That means other things are left out. And so if you have exclusive jurisdiction, you are the only court that can hear that case. And that's in contradiction to this thing called concurrent jurisdiction, meaning that a state or a case can be heard in either state or federal court. All right. Because sometimes we have laws that are both state laws and federal laws. Okay. And so it can be heard in either one. Lastly, guys, what is federal jurisdiction? When can a federal court hear a case? The big thing here is if it applies to the U.S. Constitution. If it's an issue with the U.S. Constitution, it goes to a federal court. Now, of course, there are state constitutions as well, and so those wouldn't go to a federal court. If it involves a violation of federal law, pretty straightforward. Federal law, robbing a bank, murder, things like that. If it's a disagreement between two or more state governments, okay, it's going to go to federal court. Yes, there can be this. This would be, again, a civil case between two or more state governments. It is a loss if it's a lawsuit between citizens in different states. So if it's dealing with states at all, it's going to go to the federal court. If the U.S. government is either suing or being sued by someone, again, this is going to involve the U.S. government itself, the big government, the national government. Yes, again, the U.S. government can sue and can be sued. All right. If it involves a dispute between a foreign government and the U.S. government or an American private citizen. So if it's dealing with a foreign government, it's going to go to federal jurisdiction as well. If an accident or a crime happens on the high seas, so if it happens on international waters, things like that. Or finally, if it involves U.S. diplomats. Okay, so that would be ambassadors. That would be people who hold high positions in the government, in the federal government. Okay, and so that's really what we're looking at here. That's what the judicial branch of the government does. It ensures that everyone has their rights, and ensures that everyone is protected, but also make sure that the laws are being followed and that the proper punishment maybe happens because of it. And so we will talk further about different ways that this works, but that is your introduction to the judicial branch of the government.